Rich Strani with TMC. Thanks for watching. We're at ITEXPO 2014. On our program is Andy Abramson with Comunicano. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Hey, big show here in Las Vegas. Clearly, TMC's ITEXPO is no longer a gamble.
Okay, we'll take that as a compliment. Thanks. Yeah, we're all pleasantly surprised. Many exhibitors have been telling me they're really happy with the crowds. Things are doing great. And thanks to people like you and everyone else who's here.
We all try and bring some interesting folks who can talk about what's going on in their business. We've always looked at conferences as another form of media. So when we look at how the communication landscape's changing, it's not just the technology in the communications landscape that's changed, it's the way people gain and obtain information. So we're always very happy to recommend to our clientele that they need to be at events like, ITEXPO, M2M, IoT, pick a super Wi-Fi, because conferences are media, and that's how people get information now.
So Andy, you're an interesting individual because you have a background in internet radio that virtually no one has. You were there. You were a pioneer with Ken Radio years and years, a decade plus, where you were blazing a trail before anyone was. You were one of the first bloggers in the tech space, VoIP space. I
launched the first corporate-sponsored blog program for Nokia. No one had ever taken a corporate name and successfully put it on a blogger relations program, let alone called it the Nokia Blogger Relations Program.
As far as I know, that the first blogger relation, it might have been the only blogger relations program.
It was the first corporately named successful program.
It was a smashing success. Where you went, you reached out to bloggers,
5 years.
You helped them get access to product, and they basically wrote about the products that they got. It was very well done. So you've been on the leading edge of a lot of communications, and now you've got an agency. You've had an agency for years now, Comunicano, which really is it's helping companies. I don't want to sum it up by just saying that you help position them for acquisitions, but you do so much more. It's one of the main things that you help with. Well, why don't you give me just 60 seconds on how you look at your agency?
So we look at ourselves as an asymmetrical marketing communications agency. We've never wanted to be a PR firm. PR has always been one of the things that we do. We actually lump PR into the category of influencer relations, which includes bloggers when they were around. It includes media when they were around. It includes analysts who are still sort of around. But all those landscapes have changed dramatically. There's a lot more pay for play all across the board. What used to be very prevalent in Europe, everybody's looking for a pay me for me to write about you, or pay for me to talk about you, or pay for me to be at this event for you. So media, even the talking heads you see on national television, are being paid by somebody to represent a point of view. And good communications counselors have to figure out how to navigate where their clients' money goes. But the flip side of that is the public doesn't know that. And that's the big challenge that we all have today is there really truth in journalism anymore? In the old days, you might have had, 5 newspapers in a community area, 3 dailies in the city, 4 or 5, a couple more in the suburbs. I remember when I started in this business ages ago, in 1974 to 1988, when I worked with the Philadelphia Flyers, I had 35 media outlets every night I would be talking to. 35 outlets from print, radio, and television of high school highlights. If I needed to take a story somewhere, I had 6 TV news crews to go to at my disposal, probably 3 network and a couple independents and cable. Even the broadcast crews in markets have collapsed down to where they're sharing cameramen and they're sharing feeds. So there's a lot less news that's out there, and there's fewer reporters, fewer producers. So the game has changed. One, relationships should matter. New reporters don't develop sources. There's an adversarial relationship between the PR person and the media that shouldn't exist. When I grew up in the business, I was the media's best friend. They would call me up and say, give me a story, tell me about this. Even if you weren't being quoted, or even if it wasn't your business that was being spoken about, reporters had a respect level, and that seems to be declining simply because they're just overwhelmed. So in this era, you've got to be a lot savvier, but you also have to look at new ways of generating content.
So let's put this in real world terms for someone who's watching. Let's say there's a company out there, whether they're a startup or they're a company that realizes that they need to do a better job promoting themselves. What's the Andy 5-step or 10-step program? What do these companies need to do that's different, for example, than was 5 years ago?
So let's break down media into 3 buckets: owned, earned, and paid. Owned is stuff you put on your own website, you send out through your own newsletters, that you generate through things like YouTube, SlideShare, etc. That is your creation, and you own that content, and you control every single word. So that's owned.
Okay, owned.
Second, earned. Earned is getting a story in TMC, getting it in IT in your magazine,
Well, Internet Telephony Magazine,
getting it in
or
Network
Customer
World,
Magazine.
Computer World, getting it into the New York Times, getting into Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg. That's earned. Okay. Actually, somebody went out and wrote the story. Owned and earned. Paid is where you're going out and you're actually paying for positioning in content, which a lot of these so-called contributed articles are. That's paid media. And a contributed article, when you look at some of the magazines that used to be very deeply staffed and they've got all these contributors, somebody's getting paid to write that story that way.
Was there a John Oliver piece on that this week? Was that?
There may have been.
There was a big controversy about him talking about the sponsored content.
Sponsored content. What we used to call, and you've been around as long as I have, the advertorial.
Sure, the advertorial.
The advertorial is now paid content. There actually was a business that the Gig Home team bought called Paid Content. Rafat Ali, who's now got skiffed in the travel business market, Rafat actually created a whole publication around paid content. So paid content, earned media, owned media are 3 building blocks. Now, how do you do that as a company? You said startup or even big business. You need to have at the core your own digital media network. And a digital media network includes your own contributions and then curated content from social media like Twitter and LinkedIn, curated content of stories that have appeared in media outlets that your audience would want to know about, and then taking that digital media, including some video, including some podcasts, including some webinars, and being able to amplify your presence. If you look at some websites of companies, whether it's Cisco or Visage, more and more what we used to call have a blog has now blossomed into a digital media network of your own. And by doing so, you end up having control on your website, but then you're also getting all the link love because you're getting relevant content within a vertical. And that's one of the other things that people have to understand, that it's no longer about trying to spoof the search engine, which was everybody's game, or game the search engines. Search engines have gotten really smart. They know they can tell if you're trying to game it. So the best way is to be extremely consistent about what you're writing and be very linear and very deep. Don't try and be extremely horizontal, be vertical.
And that's really, the advice that someone like a Matt Cutts will give you from Google is that you want to be an expert in your field, and so that means you just want to have depth of content on the topic that you want to be known for.
I've been saying that for years, ever since, I have one blog called VoIP Watch. I write about VoIP on it when I do, and it's always been able to rank high. When I was writing 2 and 3 posts a day, it was always on the front page of Google. Why? It was consistent. If you look at how the internet advertising world is finally getting, I've been critical of the Internet Ad Bureau's approach to clicks and cost per click models and impression models that started out in the early 2000s, or late 90s rather, when the internet was really booming, when the IAB came out with this CPM model. Well, the reality is the internet is a direct marketing vehicle, and it's not how many, it's who. And that's another thing that companies really need to think about. It's not how many people read you. It's not how big your circulation is. The key is who's reading you, and is it a vertical audience that's interested in what your business has to say, because you're providing relevant content back to them that they would be interested in. If you don't give them relevant content, you end up losing their attention and they ultimately disappear.
Very well said. So on a closing note, I'd like you to explain to companies out there that are looking to better themselves in terms of having a better presence, or maybe they're looking to be acquired, or they're looking to raise money, whatever it is. How can your company help them?
So we've done that now 35 times. We've had 35 exits in the last 14 years, which is a pretty good batting average when you think about it. And we're talking about companies that we've either worked with in the beginning, middle, or all the way through to the bitter end. When I say the bitter end, they got acquired, which means we lose a customer. However, the philosophy is, have the right team, have the right story, be able to pick your positioning carefully, which we do every day, and then message to the audience that matters. Again, don't try and be all things to all people. Don't try and tell something that's not happening. Focus on your strengths and pick on your opponent's weaknesses. And the biggest thing is have a defensible framework that's built around your product or your service. Don't just try and sell image. Don't sell pedigree of the CEO and the sales guy and the CMO, because at the end of the day, those people can come and go, but the product's going to stay. And if you have a great product and a great story, you're going to succeed.
Well said. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rich.
This was great.